Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film, and this year's official podcast media partner for the dCFF21 2021 Film Festival. Now, longtime listeners will know that here at the Cinematropolis, we are big fans of larger-than-life's big concepts with a big heart, which is why today we are going to be taking a look at one of this year's most romantic, larger-than-life films that is playing as part of the dCFF Film Festival, Between Waves. This film is playing as part of the dCFF 2021 Virtual Film Festival. Let's jump into the synopsis, shall we?
Don't trust me.
You're talking about the possibility of infinite universes existing parallel to each other?
I found a way to cross over.
So after his disappearance, Jamie pursues her missing lover through parallel dimensions until she collides with a shattering revelation. This is a cerebral, fast-paced science fiction story with romantic longing at its core. A visually beautiful film wrapped in shades of blue with highlights of sea green. Very appropriate color palette there. Now, to learn more about what inspired this film's ambitious premise and really how it manages to juggle the sci-fi concept with the core character and romance and themes, I'm very excited to welcome the filmmaker behind this gem. We're joined by the Between Waves director, co-writer, and co-producer, Virginia Abramovich. Virginia, welcome to the Cinematic Schematic.
Thank you for having me here.
Here at the Cinematropolis, as I mentioned here, we love genre films, we love sci-fi, we love time travel, we love cross-dimensional stories. There's also a lot of those out there and a lot of different takes on those types of stories at this point. So I'd love to just hear from you. I mean, like, what were some of the other genre films that influenced your approach to the cross-dimensional travel that we see him here in Between Waves?
I mean, I love genre films myself as well, but what I kind of look at this as more of like a character-driven story that's less like the sci-fi is part of the ideas behind it. But I mean, the films that kind of really inspired me or Memento, which is more to deal with like memory and time. Inception, definitely. And some of the films that aren't sci-fi, like Wild, which is like a female journey through like a self journey kind of, and, you know, figuring out herself. I also really like Sharp Objects, which is the TV show by Jean-Marc Vallée. Also, Wild was by him as well, which is kind of has a mystery. Like it's also like a self-discovery story and dealing with your own demons, but has like a mystery element to it. So these are kind of like, I guess, were the films that inspired me, or the films that I kind of, when I was thinking of this story, is what I looked at.
Yeah, I mean, and all those examples that you just provided there, from Memento to Sharp Objects, all of those are certainly very character-driven stories that just happen to have that interesting sort of genre twist to it. I mean, so would you say, I'm curious, like, whenever you were writing the script for this, were you informed more, when you were sort of like drafting up, like, how does this work? Were you informed more by the story and character when making sort of the rules, or did you sort of like write rules out later?
So I do want to say that most of the rules aren't my rules. I basically read about quantum physics and the theories of multiple universes. Brian Greene is really awesome. I don't know if you know of his writing, but he's a strength theorist. But basically, he's like, he kind of like talks about there's a lot of theories that the multiple universes exist. Including the fact that, when they collide particles, they exist in more than one place at the same time. So so there's actually, like, I guess, some factual things to support the idea of multiple universes. And so I didn't make any of that up. Just kind of used what was already out there. And I think the only thing that sort of like kind of where I added to it was the fact that like the idea that multiple universes are created by choices that you make. So potentially there's many, I guess, parallel timelines that exist where you've made other choices, which is really cool. Like that just blows my mind. But then also this idea that they can converge. So they can come together and again become the same timeline where, and then I thought, how do you reconcile that? And that's where I kind of went, well, maybe that's like that part of memory that you have where things don't quite make sense. Like when you say to somebody, oh, remember we did this and that. And they go, no, we did exactly the opposite. Right.
Sort of a little bit of the Mandela effect working its way in there.
Yeah. The deja vu, I use, that idea as well. Which people think it is like there is sort of this thought that deja vus are you seeing yourself in another timeline. And then it so was more of a device to look at this character's mental state, her guilt, her feeling, her anxiety, her being in a place where she's making a huge choice of whether to keep this unwanted child from a partner that's gone, or if she even wants to continue living herself. So, and I wanted to always keep the audience in a place where they don't know, just like Jamie, like the main character, doesn't know if it's real or not. So it's not like there's clues. So you could watch that whole movie in a way that you could say like, oh, she's just going, it's just mental illness, right? Or she's going crazy. Or you could read it, look at it and go, yep, absolutely. Time travel or multiple dimensions interfering with each other. And that was sort of, because in my own personal life, I did have somebody close to me that suffered with mental illness. And I just saw how, like, sometimes I would think, is this real? Like, is this really like are they really experiencing these things? Am I just not, are they just like almost like clairvoyant or getting a glimpse into something we don't see? So it's just, I've been thinking of all these ideas that have been in my head for a long time. So it was, I see it as a great privilege that I got a chance to actually explore it and tell the story.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of the, I think one example that comes to mind, like the butterfly effect, that Ashton Kutcher movie from way back in the early aughts, maybe he's having these real experiences or maybe it's mental illness. It's a little unclear and ambiguous, which kind of adds a lot of, I would say, like value and rewatchability, and also leaves that room for personal interpretation. I mean, you mentioned Memento and Inception, and there's nothing Christopher Nolan likes more than leaving his audience with ambiguous answers. I mean, was that a very intentional choice yourself?
Absolutely. Because it's also sort of my background is like from, mass communication and looking at like postmodern theories and things like that. And kind of looking at how we just make, like we actually make up our truths. Right. So I wanted it to always feel on the edge, and the ending also was intended to be ambiguous and sort of very open-ended, and yes, a nod to Inception.
Well, I mean, hey, that's a great film to make a big nod to. But here's the really great thing about Between Waves. It's not. I think you and you've already sort of hit on this at the top here, but like this isn't just a sci-fi. I think at least in some of the marketing material, you described it more specifically as a metaphysical love story. And I want to hone in. We've already talked about the metaphysical part a little bit, but the love story piece is really, really central to the film. So why do you think it was so important to make that love story the center of the sort of like larger concepts you were dealing with?
I guess it's what makes us all tick, right? Like that personal connection to somebody, and it's I don't know. It's funny. Like the script went through a lot of rewrites and stuff, and it's a love story that I guess doesn't end in love, right? So, but you know how much she loves him, right? So it's chasing that love that, I don't know, to me that felt really authentic, I guess.
All the sci-fi is awesome, but it's only really as compelling as it is because you're invested in the characters who are making their way through the story. Now, you mentioned the fear of water here. The titular ocean waves are a clearly very large element in the film. So I'm always curious about when it comes to filmmakers working in the water, because everyone has sort of a different approach and there's a lot of unique challenges that come with this. So could you tell me a little bit more about your filming process for Between Waves and what sorts of challenges were involved with this shoot?
Oh yeah. Well, it was a very low budget shoot, but with a lot of awesome professionals, and a lot of help from the film industry, because I've been working in the film industry myself for over 20 years. So, and I made, a lot of short films, and this is my chance to make a feature, and a lot of just very awesome people came out, but my crew was tiny. By the time we were, so in Toronto, we were small, maybe, 20, 25 people. By the time we got to the Azores, there were days when, including cast, we were like 13 people. So everybody did, the sound recordist boomed, worked out of a bag, and also was a drone pilot and, hair and makeup. Like, everybody did more than one job and did it to a very high professional level, which is, so I'm grateful, but we did, we just had to be very innovative. We shot in the Azores, where we had to bring even our own apple boxes. Oh. So there's all those challenges, but at the same time, it was amazing and it's such a discovery. The underwater footage, we shot in a pool of, some people I know that have an indoor pool. And, we were supposed to do, have a scuba diver person that was going to come and, be with the DP and all this stuff, but, usually you go in a tank and it would cost you like $40,000, but we had about 4. So then Alex Jordan, who's my co-producer, brilliant guy, just went, okay, we're going to get a ladder. We're going to get a new ladder. And we put that in the pool. Jason Weber, our DP, sat on the ladder in the pool with a snorkel, and the cast would, either go through the lens this way or that way, or we would have objects go through, and then it all cut together. But that was a full day of us in the pool, all the underwater stuff. But yeah, it was challenging. And at one time, all the stuff by the rock cliff, right, where she's yelling at the waves. That day it was raining sideways. And it was windy and it was crazy, and the waves were coming, and I thought, oh my God, what am I doing to everybody?
You got some great shots though. I mean, you can't replicate that, right?
No, it's awesome. Yeah. And I'm just grateful. I feel like I had such an awesome cast, such an awesome crew. So it's to their professionalism and their hard work that everybody came through.
That same level of professionalism certainly shines through in the final film that deadCenter attendees will be able to watch. Now, as we begin to wind down our conversation, I mean, this seems like an especially personal or passion project for you. I mean, what do you hope that our deadCenter audience here in Oklahoma City can take away from this emotionally charged but also very cerebral story in Between Waves?
For me, it's a story of finding yourself, because this journey that Jamie goes on, in the end, she overcomes her own struggles, finds her own answers, and sort of, takes ownership of the decisions that she's making. So to me, it is a story of choosing life. It is a story of choosing. Sorry, and I don't mean to be it's not It's not a political pro-anti thing. It's believing in yourself, I think is a better way of phrasing that. Choosing and overcoming adversity, and also I mean, in some ways, it's the whole thing is a question of what's real and what's not, and also questioning some of the norms and things like that we have in your own personal life to look. That's why I love. I've always been a huge fan of the sci-fi genre because it lets you do that. It lets you step outside your little, bubble and kind of look at like a whole other world and be able to see like, oh, what's the possibilities within that. So, and I hope they enjoy it. I think I think it's such a beautiful film. It breaks my heart that people can't see it in the theaters.
Certainly, this is one that'll play very well on the big screen.
Maybe still. Well, actually, so that in September, it's September 21st. It's coming out. It'll be released in. So it's going to have a theatrical release in New York and LA. It's going to come out on iTunes in the US and the UK, and in Canada. Also, the theatrical release. There's no theatrical. We don't know. We're still in lockdown, so who knows? I most likely will not be a theatrical release, but is also going to be coming out in Canada on September 21st.
On the note of sort of upcoming releases and the news related to the release, I should say, where can listeners keep up with you and your work online?
So there's actually a website at betweenwavesfilm.com, and they could link to all our social media. And I'm trying to think what else. And I think take a look at the film at the dCFF Film Festival. But if they miss that, it's going to come out on iTunes. So, or I'm not sure where else actually. We'll see. But that's in the US and the UK. So.
All right. So it sounds like keep your eyes open on the Between Waves website, and listeners, I'll make sure to link that in the show notes. Virginia, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. Is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners with related to Between Waves before we wrap up our conversation today?
No, but thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure. And it's great. Thank you. And thanks to the festival for selecting the film.
Of course. Well, Virginia, it's been a pleasure having you on the Cinematic Schematic. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. You take care.
All right, listeners, and if you want to watch Between Waves, dCFF pass holders can catch it as part of the dCFF Virtual Film Festival until the virtual festival's conclusion on Sunday, June 20th at 11:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. And for more thoughtful conversations that excite, inspire, and connect filmmakers and film enthusiasts across the state of Oklahoma, you can subscribe to the Cinematic Schematic via your preferred podcast app, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or going wherever you can find your podcasts. You can also head on over to deadcenterfilm.org. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you again next time.